Yeah, I was asking you how is the Whoop, but I'm planning to sell my Garmin um,
Yeah.
and buy one.
Do you use the Garmin for tracking like GPS tracking and stuff like this? Because the Whoop doesn't have it.
No, GPS. No, what is the GPS for? Actually, it's for whenever you run.
Yeah, whenever you run, it tracks like where you run and how
No,
far the distance is, all that stuff.
I
It's
run.
not
I
done by the
run.
Whoop.
Yeah, I run sets of
Rarely.
400 meters. No, I run every week,
Oh no,
but
no, yeah.
400 meters, 800. It's not like I'm going around the mountains or whatever. Like I live in the fucking
Okay.
mountain. Like if you go 100 meters one direction, you are going uphill like this. So it's impossible to
Yeah.
run around here. Why are you crying?
Yeah, because there's this awesome book. I don't know if I told you about. I really like it. It's about endurance training for like people that run uphill. That's why I was laughing.
Ah,
I just recently did
good,
a
good.
couple of webinars about like aerobic training, endurance training
Yeah,
for cyclists, and strength training for cyclists. And yeah, I think there's so much good information in there. It's an awesome book, and it's
yeah,
very readable. But I think the introduction to it I think it's also super cool for CrossFitters to understand that aerobic capacity is like a very fundamental thing that you should develop before you if you want to get really good at CrossFit. Not before
yeah.
developing strength, but I think it's a very important prerequisite to becoming good at CrossFit.
Yeah, I think it's
It's
you
really
you
good.
really need to get really good separately at endurance training and strength training. Then you combine both. But I kind of started to see that the typical, I'm talking about performance, not the person that goes to the class and wants to do 45 minutes. That's fine. But if you really want to get better at CrossFit, do maybe 1 year of strength, 1 year of endurance, or 6 months, but pure of that, then start combining things. um, I think there are way better results doing that than maybe a little bit of everything every week.
I mean, I think if you like totally separate it, you probably have an issue. If you do 1 year of strength training without anything else and 1 year of endurance training without anything else, I think you'll have an issue because you're probably
Yeah,
losing quite a bit of your
yeah, yeah.
strength gains.
Uh, I think
But
that's
I
a
think
little
that
bit of an exaggeration. I mean,
yeah, yeah,
mainly strength training and a little bit of endurance, like a little bit of workouts and things like that, and then the other way around. Let's say 6 months, a year is maybe too much, or three
yeah.
months,
You know
blocks
what's
of three
interesting?
months.
I think there's a bunch of really cool research out there about like concurrent training. So where you do strength training and endurance training at the same time, because the cellular adaptations are not really
Yeah,
overlapping. But I think if you do a lot of CrossFit for like high intensity training, you're kind of fucking up both other adaptations. And I
yeah,
think you can
exactly.
pretty much train like if you have low aerobic training, not too intense, and strength training, I think it's a great example that you can do all year round. You're getting strong, you're building a great aerobic base, and then I think just to stay proficient in it, I think it's still necessary to do some kind of CrossFit training, like 1 or 2 workouts a week. Nothing like
Yeah,
crazy where you go like 5 or 6 workouts, but I think a baseline of like having that mixed modal training is necessary to stay competitive. I think if you really just do one thing for a year
yeah,
without like doing any kind of CrossFit, I think it will be very hard for you to develop like meaningful capacity for the sports. I
yeah,
think
for
it will
for
be too
sure.
specialized.
I think
Yeah,
what I meant
but
is,
that
like 80% of your workout of your training
yeah,
could
yeah.
be more focused into strength, and then you still have what you say, like maybe 2 3 workouts and endurance workout, but you are focusing mainly, let's say 3 months, every 3 months. That's more or less the training program that I'm doing is every 3 months they change the cycle. And you can see a bit
Okay.
more emphasis on strength, a little bit more emphasis on endurance, but it's not as much as I think it could be improved. Your performance could be improved if you make 3 months 80% strength, and then a little bit of workouts, and then maybe the next 3 months, maybe you don't go to the opposite, but something in the middle, and then the other three
A little
months
less strength and a little
of
bit more. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a long-term approach. If you want to compete the same year, if you are starting, if you have competitions in summer, and if you want to do that in January, maybe you're gonna get to the competition a little bit funny. But a long-term approach, it's basically what Fraser was doing. He was doing weightlifting for 13 years, 10 years, something like that. Only weightlifting. He couldn't even go up the stairs without heavy breathing. And then he focused after the second year of losing, or not losing, but just placing second. He admitted that he just focused on endurance, and
yeah,
his weakness
yeah, I
started to
agree.
be the barbell. So
Uh,
it's a long-term approach in that way.
I think it's just, I think not a lot of people do it, but I know from all the people I recently, it's quite a bit like a while ago. When James Hobart was training with where it's in the other file. When James Hobart was training with Rich Froning for a while. So James Hobart is another guy that has been at the games for, like, he's a phenomenal athlete.
Yeah.
He's been at the games, I think, 9 times or 10 times back in the days. And I asked them, so like how their training looks like, and he sent me a super interesting like summary. And what you'll see is that they've always been doing it, but they have like really a lot of stuff where they do lower intensity, more aerobic style training, and they kind of row 2 to 3 times a week. They sit on the bike 4 to 5 times a week. They run 2 to 3 times. They swim 2 to 3 times, and it's not with a super high intensity. A lot of the sessions are more like technique based, and yeah, it's not that crazy. So I think this is something that is a very good approach to, like, not overtraining and still developing capacity as you go. Program.
Yeah.
Texted me.
So how is the how is it? Have you been tracking the whoop, or have you been tracking,
Oh
or the
yeah, I've
whoop
been
have
tracking
been
it.
tracking some stuff that it's been a little bit better than last time?
I've been tracking it, and I think it's actually really. You know what I would recommend? I think it's with all these devices. It's maybe using it for half a year to see,
Yeah.
like, to. I think every athlete should still have a good feeling for their body. I don't know if you understand what I mean, but I think even if you don't have a heart rate monitor, you should be knowing, like, kind of in which domain you're at the moment. If you're like almost redlining, if you're like, okay, I could do this for 2 more hours. If you're like, I'm really close to my max, like using RPE, like rate of perceived exertion. I think it's probably not a very precise metric if you don't know your body well. I think if you know your body really well, it can be fairly precise as well, because I know some people that can say they know their heart rate within 5 beats up and down, or even less when they're doing exercise. Like, they just feel in which zone they are training in. And I think it's the same thing with the Whoop. I mean, it tells you stuff that you already know. When I go to bed at 12:30, it tells me I was lacking sleep and I can't train that hard.
Yeah.
I have to admit, I have not been training super hard, so I'm like the last couple of weeks with all the work. But I'm curious to see the recommendations when I'm starting training a little bit harder again. I'm really interested to see that, like how the recovery, like what it's telling me. Because at the moment, if I sleep decently enough, my recovery and all the other values are really high. But I think one of the reasons for this is that I'm not training intensely.
So what are the parameters that they are using for tracking the recovery, besides the sleep, obviously?
So for recovery, they're using, I don't know why the heck it's not working. They are using HRV, resting heart rate, respiratory rate. I think they're factoring in the sleep, and I think they're also factoring in the daily strain. So how intense your last sessions have been, or how intense your session has been. And I think they have I think they have a daily set that they use, but then they also have the last seven days that they factor in it. And I think that's how they measure recovery. So it's a combination of sleep, HRV, resting heart rate, breathing frequency, sleep quality, sleep duration, and daily strain. I think that's how they're composing it.
Yeah.
And
is the heartbeat,
what I also like
is the heartbeat tracking correctly?
It's fairly good. Yeah, it's interesting compared to the watch.
Yeah.
So far, it has been really good. I did one more intense session where I went up pretty high with my heart rate and it was tracking it actually pretty immediately.
Okay.
So I think that was nice.
Yeah, because that's the main reason why I don't want to use a watch.
Because of the strap. Sorry, I have the feeling because of the strap. The strap is a little bit more elastic than the straps that you have on the watch. I don't know which one you have, but that makes it fit better on the arm. I think with the watch, the issue is sometimes it's too loose, or if it's super tight, it's not really nice. But I think the issue is if you run and the watch is moving around, it starts a little bit getting off the skin and on the skin. And with this device, no matter what I do, because it's the elastic strap,
always tight.
It's fairly tight when I train.
Yeah, I tried the watch. I tried to put it even tighter, but I get the same bad result. And you can see, like, even if it's tight, if you move the arm or whatever, you can see that it's not 100% on the surface always.
And I think you as well, you have a fairly thin wrist. And I think if the wrist is thin and the watch is big, sometimes the bony structures as well. They push it a little bit off. I think if it would have a very small wrist, a big wrist, a big watch would work better. I think sometimes a smaller wrist helps, a smaller band and a smaller watch helps that it's in a little bit better position. But yeah, whatever. The other thing that I think is a little bit weird is, and I think we talked already about it, is how it tracks strain.
Strength.
You know what I mean? The strain. How hard the workout was.
Okay. How does it do that?
Because it does track it, but it tracks it as more as in which heart rate zone you are for what time, and that's your daily strain. So if you do like a super heavy weightlifting workout and you're like smoked, it really doesn't give you a good strain value. I think it's totally underestimating the strain on the body.
Because the heartbeat doesn't go that high, I guess.
Yes. There's no prolonged elevation of the heart rate, and that's why it's not really tracking it well.
Does it track? Because I'm not sure if.
A bit of an issue.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I think this is quite a big of an issue. But what they say, but I'm not super happy with what they're saying in this regard, is that the heart training will influence your autonomic nervous system, and your HRV will very likely decrease. But my feeling is that it's not a super good correlation with how you feel when you've done really hard strength training. But once again, I have not really tested it for myself in regards to my own training. It's hard to say anything.
But the strength training, I mean, if you do a set of 5x5 of back squat, which is going to take you maybe 15-20 minutes max, and you do 2-3 minutes between sets, rest between sets, your heartbeat will never go too high. I'm guessing during those 15 seconds that you are doing, or the last 10 seconds, maybe, the first two sets, the first 2 reps will be easy for your heartbeat. But then maybe the last 2 or 3 could be a little bit, you are exhausted a little bit. I'm not sure if that tracks like a huge spike on the heartbeat. I don't really know. But if it's tracking only how sustained is the rhythm, then definitely it's not going to track. But if you do, a 90 minutes or 60 minutes of a strength where you do back squat, push press, squat cleans or something like this, one after the other, maybe your heartbeat is high enough. Yeah, but again, if it's only tracking your heartbeat.
If you don't do it like in a workout style, your heart rate will never go up.
Nothing, right?
If you have a very intense set of squatting and you do go for more reps, your heart rate will probably go up a little higher. Like if you like a set of 20, for example, your
yeah,
heart
yeah,
rate
yeah.
will be fairly high at the
Yeah,
end.
but that's
But it's also a
cardio
little
already, a set
different.
of 20.
Yeah, it's more like
Yeah,
cardio training. Yeah, exactly. But it's also a little bit different than cardio in this regard because of the tension in the muscles. The blood flow regulation is different, so you don't get a good cardiovascular stimulus for the heart, but it's still your heart rate is up. But it's so short in time that it really doesn't matter. I think if
yeah,
you, it's interesting if you run like a whatever you run for 2 hours at a fairly high intensity, it's like the values go really high up, the strain
yeah,
values.
yeah,
If
yeah,
you do like a super hard workout for 2 hours, that is more like in the domain where you have strength and other stuff as well.
yeah.
You don't see a lot of impact
You
on the
don't see that
HRV.
much.
On
But then
the strain.
then the values that will give you in terms of recovery, it's not going to be accurate, because if you're doing 90 minutes of strength plus endurance, typical CrossFit training, which is way harder than just going for a run for 60 minutes or something like this if you're going in a slow pace. And but then what will track as the running is way tougher than 60 minutes workout, the strength, weightlifting, endurance. And I think
Very
it's
likely, yes.
completely the opposite. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. It's so I can't tell for me right now, but what I've read so far is that
Yeah.
it's not really. If you do like CrossFit style training, it factors in some of the nervous
Yeah.
system exhaustion with the HRV overnight. So
Okay.
you'll have a worse recovery because the autonomic nervous system will be affected by your strength training. But the question is how accurate, like how good
Yeah.
like how much is the HRV really affected with
Yeah.
the training, strength training, and like how much really does it influence the number you get as a recovery number
Yeah. True.
from.
Maybe it's just an
But once
estimation.
again,
That's the only way
it
that
needs to
they
be
have.
tested.
That's the only way that they have to factor in a strength training, because at the end what they are measuring is your vitals. And how do you measure a strength into vitals? Like it's kind of difficult. For me, at least, what I wanted to get Whoop and the Garmin watch was to be able to know my optimal heartbeat during workouts, so I don't cross the line, the no return point, because I used to have that, because I've been I've been doing workouts for very little, or training for competing workouts for very little. I've done more strength and condition and a little bit of workouts, but like 80% strength and 20 the opposite. So when I started to train for competition, which I need to do more workouts, I was like, the first 2 minutes I was going all in, and then not all in, but I was going too high. So then I got to the point very quick in the WOD where I was already exhausted. And then the 80% rest of the WOD, it was just me battling with, not falling. So I wanted to know, okay, if I go past that line, then I'm done. So I should be training into this, and maybe should I do a sprint at this time of the workout? That's what I wanted to have.
But you know what
This
I
tracking.
recommend? Maybe then I recommend. I think if you want to do this, I recommend that you buy a. I think it's better
Strap.
if you buy a strap for your heart rate monitor. You buy a watch where you can put in heart rate zones, and that makes you aware of it by beeping or whatever. I think there's some tools out there that you could use that beeps when you cross the whatever
Yeah.
from zone 2 to zone 3, or from zone 3 to zone 4. That gives you a visual and auditory cue that you're like redlining, because you can only track the data after the workout.
Afterwards.
Essentially,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I think it doesn't work if you put it up here. I mean, it can work. I think I have a look at my heart rate if
Yeah,
I
at
want to,
least
but
my thought was, well, at least I know, the feeling that I have when I'm passing that line. So I know I shouldn't be like, at the moment I'm doing it as I feel. I know more or less from my experience that if I'm too tired, I have an scale from 0 to 10. I know that when I'm at 5, it's more or less like calories. You can be on the salt bike at 300 watts, and you can go forever. But if you go to 500, you can only last maybe 2 minutes. So that's the same.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I can see in the middle of the workout, okay, I'm going too fast. I need to slow down. But I'm doing it as I feel. I would like to have some tracking here that told me already, this is the point where you shouldn't be. That's how I felt in the workout. And then while I'm doing a workout, I should be able to feel it by myself.
I think for this stuff, like having a heart rate monitor is great. Like understanding what you feel in your, like how your body feels, what the data says, and then trying to make sense out of like how are they actually correlating. I think it's sometimes also interesting that your vitals are fairly okay and you feel like shit, maybe you, because of whatever, like emotionally, and the work of the day feels extra hard, and sometimes it's the opposite. You feel really like you feel really your values are shitty, but you feel great doing the workout. If you feel very well and very relaxed and how do you say it, like refreshed, and you do a workout, it's easy to go over that line and without feeling it. So I think it's really cool to develop a natural sense of how your body feels and in which state you're in, and get measurable data on it as well to figure out if the data corresponds to how you feel.
Yeah, exactly. So a good example, during the Open, we did a month before the Open, we did the burpee box jump over snatch, dumbbell snatch. In that workout, I was training with a guy. He's super short. He's pretty fit and also super short. So I was trying, and we are more or less at the same level. He's better than me in this kind of workouts. So I was just trying to pace myself with him. And obviously I could see that every time he was doing a burpee or just dumbbell snatch, he was always 1 second ahead of me, even at the same rhythm, just because he's shorter, and he's good as well. But then I was pushing a little bit more because I wanted to be at his pace. So up to the 20 or the 30, I think the 30, no, the 20, we were more or less at the same level. At the 30, I just collapsed. I tried to get the dumbbell. I did like 5 in a row, and I wanted to, throw up, whatever it was. I was feeling really bad, and I did 15, almost 16 minutes during the Open, which I knew already. I shouldn't go over that. The burpees need to be more slower for me, and focus on kind of a strict dumbbell snatch, because that's a little bit of my strength, the shoulders. So I ended up doing 13 point something, or 14.2 or something like that. And I was feeling much better on the second one, even that I did 2 minutes less. And I think I could have even pushed it a little bit more, but I was afraid of the feeling that I had before, because I knew I went way too high, and way too high, that I couldn't do dumbbell snatch. Like I was feeling so tired. And then during the Open, I did everything unbroken, other than the last 50 that I think I did 30, 12 and 8, or 10 and 10, something like that. And I was feeling fine. I could have pushed a little bit more. So I think it's really important to know, stay here during 80% of the workout, push it here, whatever it is. Yeah.
And you know what? I think that's what the good CrossFit guys, they are really good at that. The best guys, it's like how they can pace themselves in the workouts. They know exactly like what the pace is that they need to go, that they can sustain. And I think that's probably the stuff that the people that start out with it, competitors, are the weakest, is trying to identify which pace they can really go and not burning out within the first
I think is
the first couple of minutes.
Fronin's signature, it's been always starting at the same pace that he's finishing. Everybody goes like, he seems like he's gonna end up being last, or pretty bad, and then everybody's like slowing down, and then he just keeps the same rhythm, and finish first most of
I think it was the only time I saw him speeding up was when he did the workout with Jason Kalipa, Samantha Briggs. I think it was the thruster burpee workout, the Open. And I think there was a really nice thing of seeing him. I think he wanted to beat Sam Briggs at all costs. And you could see on the last reps he was really speeding up. But I think it was one of the very rare occasions where I saw him like almost redlining in a workout. But other than that, I think he's super good I think he's a really good guy at pacing compared to a lot of other competitors.
To others, definitely.
That's strength.
Yeah. Cool. But should we go?
It's great that you always talk so long.
What was that?
I think it's always nice that we talk so long. It's still shitty if we want to do some content, I think I have a client coming in 15 minutes, but
yeah, but it's still okay. I think a little bit of second part of whoop review was fine. So then you have now 15 minutes to do another intro to Neuro Athletic training. So maybe it's good with 15 minutes. Maybe it will be good to do some, whatever you feel, but maybe some kind of examples of exercises or something before needed to do those exercises, if that's what you think.
do you know how to so that I can share my screen?
Sure.
Is this the okay? That's good. Now you can see what I'm sharing.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think one of the really nice things of thinking about Neuro Athletic is that like one of the main changes that it made for me is thinking differently about how the body functions and how the body works. And very often we are in our training, we are very much focused on the outputs of our training. So like which weight can I use? Like how do I like use progressive overload to get stronger? How strong the muscle is? But in essence, what changed my perspective completely and how to affect these things is, yeah, of course, progressive overload is necessary to make the muscle stronger, but it's how the inputs that the brain receives and the integration of these inputs very often have dramatic effects on the outputs. So like giving you simple examples, I had a guy that I was working with severe shoulder pain for over a year, has been to multiple doctors a couple of times, a lot of physiotherapists, and like the output of the brain is he had some kind of shoulder pain, like he couldn't lift his arm up anymore. So pain is an output of the brain. And what was super interesting for me is like providing him with a different input. And what I did is it's called like sharp dull testing. So you poke one with a like sharp needle. You use something that's a little bit softer, and then you kind of like let the athlete try to figure out what's happening. If it's poking with the needle or if it's like the dull sensation. And we did this for like 20-30 seconds, and his shoulder pain was like going from 7 to 8, not able to lift his arm up anymore, to having full range of motion in the shoulder again, and being almost pain-free. So, but what changed for me is that I'm at the moment when I see somebody is not able to do something, like let's say there's a shift in the squat, I could go like, yeah, okay, your right glute med is not working. You lack abduction in this kind of position. But very, very often, what's really the case for these shifts is not that the muscle itself is weak, but that there's a dysregulation of muscle tone on one side of the body or both sides of the body. That there are like higher order functions that affect how your muscles are working. And I think what would be fairly nice to do is like show people how eye positions, how basic movement of the eyes are able to affect your reflexive stability. So if most often when we move, let's say I'm going to grab something with my right hand when I'm standing, my left brain is sending my signals to my right arm to do the movement. But even more important is what it does to my left side of the body. Because if I'm reaching out with my right hand, there needs to be a shift in my center of gravity, in my center of mass, so that I'm not falling over. So there needs to be a lot of reflexive stability on the other side of the body so that I'm actually able to move. And a lot of the output the brain generates is, it doesn't go to the hand. That's about 10 to 20% go to the hand, like the motor output. But most of the output, like around 80 to 90%, go to the other side and try to reflexively stabilize the other side. So that the active movement that you're doing is a very, very small part of what your brain is actually trying to accomplish. And what it really tries to accomplish is keeping you reflexively stable. And if these mechanisms don't work properly, you'll have a hard time doing movement properly, being it squatting, doing pull-ups. You see guys doing pull-ups and they always pull to one side. And I think that's
same
a
with the
great
squatting.
example. Like Same with squatting. Yeah, of course you could say, okay, this lat is not working properly. Sometimes it's the lat, but sometimes you'll have people that have a really hard time even engaging the lat in different positions. So what is the underlying cause? If you have a weak cerebellum, it's a very old part of the brain. They're regulating extensor tone. So the latissimus is an extensor muscle. If the cerebellum is not working on the left side, you'll have less extensor tone on this side, and this may lead to a compensation pattern in your movement. And then it's about, hey, how can I upregulate activity in the cerebellum so that my extensor muscles get stronger again? And I think
how would you regulate that?
If you look at the, sorry.
How would you regulate if you have a bad cerebellum? I'm not sure what that means. One, what is the cause? What would be the causes for that, and how could you,
So the cerebellum has a lot of different parts, and on a very simple level, it's affecting, or it's managing movement accuracy, it's managing balance, and it's managing coordination. So what you could do when you have a bad cerebellum is do a lot of complex movements on one side of the body. So if my left cerebellum is weak, what I could do is, like in CrossFit, it's always like this frontal plane movements. But what you could do to activate the cerebellum is use band, do figure eight. Try to throw something, try to babble a basketball if the cerebellum is weak on your left side. So this is all stuff that upregulates your cerebellum, where you have accuracy and coordination involved, doing stuff at different speeds on one side that are more complex and fairly new to the cerebellum, or fairly new to your brain, stuff that you haven't done before a lot. Okay, that's great. Yeah,
that's actually pretty cool.
The cerebellum.
Yeah, I think that.
Yeah, but so yeah.
Yeah, that goes. I mean, I'm not following. It's been a while since I did the Ido Portal workshop, but I think he has improved and changed a lot of things. But lately, what I've seen from him is doing a lot of this, moving things around, maybe like even playing with balls, juggling, I think it's called in English, when you start like throwing things and bouncing two balls against the ground, a lot of these kind of things. So maybe, I think it goes into that direction at some point. You need to learn how to move first.
So let me say something about this, because I think this is really cool. If you read from Greg Glassman, Fitness in 100 Words, one of the last sentences, regularly learn and play new sports. And I think one of the main things that is lacking from like athletic training in the gym is the coordination, accuracy demands that you have when you actually do new sports, when you actually learn something new. And I think this is parts of how you can keep your brain healthy. Is you say, hey, learn new languages, learn just learn anything new. But one thing is actually give new challenges to your body so that all these structures, especially the cerebellum, stay healthy. And I think Ido Portal is somebody that is really good doing this. I don't know how much he knows about brain science, but for me, he seems to be a very practical guy that does a lot of really interesting things, but he does it because he enjoys the movement, but he's not thinking about the therapeutic consequences of what he's doing.
Or the science behind.
Yes, exactly, because I've never heard him talk about it. Maybe he knows something about it, but that's what I like about Sea Health is that these guys, or Dr. Eric Kopp, the founder of Sea Health, like he's a vast knowledge in like how the brain works and how you could try to affect specific parts of the brain with fairly simple exercises. So what I would like to do for today, and it's like the time is fairly limited, but I want to explain something that we could test next time.
Yeah, should be. I actually want to test it this weekend, so I would like to have some exercises that I can do the weekend.
Yeah, okay. So we will. If you look at the picture that I have on my screen now, what it shows, it shows like the human brain, and there are different parts of the brain. This one where it's colored, it's called brainstem. It's a very old part of the brain, and it regulates a lot of autonomic functions like breathing, heart rate, like all the stuff that you're consciously not aware of is regulated in the brainstem. And there's some other things that are regulated here. And one very important thing is you have like 4 main centers that regulate muscle tone in the brain. And if you look at the midbrain, it's the highest part of the brainstem. it regulates muscle tone for the flexor muscles. So if the midbrain is not working properly, the really interesting thing is the midbrain, it's regulating flexor tone. So if the midbrain is not active enough, you will lack the capacity to use your flexor muscles. The flexor muscles will be weak. And you can have this unilateral, or you can have it bilateral. But what we oftentimes see is in people that have a deficit in the midbrain or an underactivation of the midbrain is that their flexor muscles are super weak. To give you a test, if you do a sit-up and you come up in the sit-up position and you have somebody that's trying to push you apart, he should not be able to do this. Very often the midbrain is regulating muscle tone or it's regulating control of the neck musculature as well. If you do stuff for your neck muscles and somebody is able to push you back in this position, it's also suggesting that the midbrain is very weak. And
what do you mean? If I'm like this, like if I'm pushing down and somebody
it's more
tries
like a
to
rotation than a side bend. So do a rotation of the head to a side bend. And if somebody's trying to push you back from this position, so rotate to the left, side bend to the right. Yeah, exactly. A little like that. Okay. If somebody's able to push you back from that position, it's very indicative that the cervical spine is not properly stabilized, that the neck is not properly stabilized.
From both sides. So if I do it like this, and if I do like this, and somebody tries from this side or from that side, okay.
You can do this as well, but like a classical test for this is there's sternocleidomastoid muscle that runs over here. That's a really good test of midbrain activation because it's also something that flexes. It's a flexor muscle as well. You could use like basic side bends or range of motion on both sides. If you activate the midbrain, that should increase as well your range of motion. But it's mainly for the flexor muscles. Then on the very bottom, we have the medulla. It's also a very old part of the brain. It's at the end of the medulla, the spinal cord comes out of the, or it's almost part of the spinal cord and it enters the spinal cord. It's your vagus nerve lives in here, like the nuclei for the vagus nerve that process all the internal sensations that you get from your brain. It's also regulating flexor tone. And then we have two regions that regulate extensor tone. It's the pons, it's the region in between in the brainstem, and it's the other one that I showed you before. It's the cerebellum. It's another very old part of the brain that's very related to movement, accuracy, balance, and coordination. So all these four things, the cerebellum at the back and the whole brainstem, they are regulating the tone between flexors and extensors. And if you have issues in one of these areas, it will have dramatic impact on your movement that it's very hard to fix by just like trying to squeeze the muscle harder. Some people even can't squeeze the muscle harder. And what I will show you next time is some simple exercises that will activate the midbrain, the pons, the medulla, that you can try to see if they have an impact on your movement. And we'll do a little assessment, and then we do a little exercise and see how it changes the movement.
Can you tell me now one or two exercises that we could do?
Yeah, you can do an easy pencil push-up. Take a pen, look at the pen, bring the pen slowly in, fixate it, and then push it out again. That's a very simple exercise, an eye exercise that's starting here in the midbrain and using the midbrain nuclei of the eye muscles to do that and test it beforehand. Like see if you can do a toe to bar, see how easy it feels. Then you try to do the exercise and then see again. Or you just do a forward bend and try to see how far you can get your hands towards the ground.
To do what? Sorry, say again.
Forward bend.
Yes.
Translated exercise. Yeah. And forward bend, like trying how far can you get down to the ground?
With the straight legs.
Yeah, with straight legs, because it's like a lot of flexor activity in the muscles. Yeah. If you activate the midbrain, it very oftentimes helps to increase flexor tone and makes it easier to do like a forward bend. Super interesting for people that have very stiff posterior chain. It might be they have a lack of midbrain activation.
Okay, let's leave it here, and then next time we go over over this, because I think that's pretty interesting.
And I think it's fun for people to test as well.
Yeah, cool.
Great.
Basti, thanks a lot.
Have a nice day.
Bye, you too. Bye-bye.